I want to teach you some powerful vocabulary that I think you must know. And I say it's going to help you speak like a native. What I really mean is that these are words that are more advanced, but they are descriptive, they are precise, especially in certain situations. So I do think this is going to help you become a more proficient speaker, but at the same time, it's going to help with your listening comprehension as well as your reading comprehension. So this is just good vocabulary to know. And I'd like to point out, if you want to access these lesson notes that are next to me, click on the link down in the description. Join our email community. If you're already a part of it, check your inbox. I have sent them to you. So of course, it's an interactive lesson. I want you to participate. I see people participating with those hearts and smileys right now in the chat. I love it. So I want you to write your answers either in the chat or the comments and actually actively participate in the lesson. So we're going to begin with some powerful verbs. And I'm breaking this down by part of speech. Here is the first question. And I'll read it to you. I'm giving you the meaning of the verb down below, as well as the first letter. So I'm going to start out a little easier, and then it may get a little more challenging as we go through this. I told you these are advanced words, so they are a little more specific, but still I tried to choose ones that I think are more commonly used, ones that you might come across if you're listening to a podcast or a news report. So in that regard, I think they're incredibly useful, especially in a professional context. So during the presentation, the speaker briefly to the company's past mistakes without going into detail. The verb begins with the letter A, and the meaning is just to make an indirect reference. And it's like you're kind of hinting at something. So it really fits in well with the sentence because you're talking about it in an indirect way. You're hinting at it, but you're not going to go into detail because we're talking about a mistake. And maybe this person does not want to talk about the company's past mistakes, and therefore they will to the mistakes and not go into detail. All right, I see some excellent answers in the chat. The verb that we're talking about is allude. And I think many of you got it because we're talking about alluded to the company's past mistakes. So that is perfect. It just means to make an indirect reference when you allude to something. And again, there's a reason that somebody might do this. They don't want to speak about it directly. They don't want to spend a lot of time talking about it. And therefore, they may acknowledge it and just move on, and they allude to something. So let's just move on to the next one. Some of them I'm going to give you a little more information on with some collocations, and I think it'll be very useful. Constant delays and poor communication only serve to the team's frustration. This means to make a problem or a situation or just some negative feeling. You're just making it worse. So think about the situation. Again, I'm kind of giving you more like of a work context. In this case, as well as the previous example, delays, poor communication. What would that do to the team's frustration? It's going to make it worse, but we can use this specific verb that's going to capture that sentiment. It's going to add a little emphasis instead of just saying, oh, it made our frustration much worse. I mean, you could say that. It's perfectly fine to say that, but you could really capture that by using this verb. So we're talking about the verb exacerbate. Perfect. Well done, Dawit, Katarina, Manuel. It just means to make a problem, a bad situation, or a negative feeling worse. Now, I want you to think about the meaning right there, to exacerbate a problem or exacerbate a situation, because these are actually common collocations. These are words that are frequently used together. And when talking specifically about this verb, this is how you may use it. and talking about exacerbating a problem and making it worse, or exacerbating a situation. You could exacerbate a decline, exacerbate poverty, exacerbate a shortage, and exacerbate a symptom. Now, of course, there are many other ways that you can use this verb. I just wanted to give you a quick little sample as to other phrases with this verb that are commonly used and that I think are very useful. It's a great way to keep building your vocabulary, which is what this is all about. So you guys are rocking this so far, all right? I'm impressed. Now, maybe this one might be a little easier. Let me my main point. We must act immediately if we want to meet the deadline. Again, I'm kind of trying to put it into more of a work context, but in this case, the verb starts with the letter R. It means to say something again a number of times, typically for emphasis or clarity. So I do think this is definitely useful in a work situation because people do this all the time. They say something over and over, not just to emphasize it, but to make sure that everybody understands, and you're going to what? I was about to say it, but I stopped myself. So what do you think? And I do think this verb is, commonly used. I feel like I use it a lot as an instructor because I do this quite often. I say things again. And you could use a word like, I see people repeat. That would work. It's like, oh, let me repeat what I just said or repeat my main point. But if you really want to include the whole idea of emphasis and clarity, then you could use the verb to reiterate. And I saw some answers in there. Perfect. Julia, Talal, I'll try to give some shout outs as I go through this. To reiterate something, it is repeating it, but you're really repeating it again because you want to clarify, make sure everybody understands. And therefore, I might say, look, we need to reiterate the policy so that all the employees are on the same page. Or look, let me reiterate, the main point of the presentation. And you're going to reiterate something. So it is really, in a sense, it is a synonym for the word to repeat, which is a very common verb. But you're just adding that emphasis or clarity when you reiterate something. So it's a great business verb. How about this one? Spreading false rumors can seriously someone's credibility in the workplace. This starts with the letter U, and we're talking about to lessen the effectiveness, power, or ability of, especially gradually or insidiously. So you might see that adverb insidiously. If something is insidious, it has a negative connotation. It just means kind of bad, evil, more in a very intentional way. And you're doing this purposefully in not a good way if you're doing something insidiously. But this verb, I think, is one that I'm sure you've heard before. Even if it is maybe it's a part of your passive vocabulary and you don't actively use it, but therefore it is a useful one if we're talking about lessening the effectiveness. And this is actually a collocation to someone's credibility. So the verb that we're looking for is to undermine. To undermine something or someone is you're just lessening, whether it's the effectiveness of something, power, ability, and you are undermining maybe what this person is saying, or you're undermining this person in their ability to do something. So another one that I think you will certainly hear in a more professional context, because this happens, I think, in business when talking about colleagues, your supervisor, or other companies, and people may undermine someone else, and it does become a little bit of a problem or an issue. So I hope that you're familiar, especially after you see some of these verbs, that you recognize them, and over time, the idea is then to make it a part of your active vocabulary so that you can use them. And to give you a little more reference, I thought it's always fun to throw some of these comics in here. It says your power nap is somewhat undermined by Mr. Cuddles. This person's trying to take a power nap, using their teddy bear, And it just kind of undermines the word power as far as having a power nap or taking a power nap. So now let's switch gears. And I told you that I'm kind of dividing this into parts of speech. Now I want to take a look at some powerful adjectives. And these are words that I think are very descriptive, very useful, whether in business or school or just in your daily conversations, depending on what you're talking about. What do you think? And this is actually true, right? My wife loves the opera, but I feel about it. So once again, for this one to make it a little easier, kind of giving you a little bit of a hint, I'm trying to allude to the correct answer by giving you that first letter. Begins with the letter A. And the meaning of this is to have mixed feelings or contradictory ideas about something or someone. And you could say that I feel about something. And this is, I guess, how I feel, about the opera. My wife loves it. She would like to go. And I'm kind of like, I guess we can go, but I don't know. Sometimes I may not really feel like it. It has its pros, its cons. And therefore, you could say that I am what? So think about this. I feel like, once again, this is a word that once I tell you the answer or show you, because I'm not seeing any guesses just yet, I think, oh, yeah, I've heard this word before. Maybe it's new for you, which is perfect. So the adjective that I'm talking about, excellent, well done, Rose, ambivalent. If you are ambivalent about something, then, you have mixed feelings as far as it's okay, it's not bad, it's not good. Or it could refer to contradictory ideas that someone may have. And in that case, you could say you're ambivalent. So this is a good descriptive word, and I'm sure that you could think of something right now. Like if I said, for me, it's the opera. And maybe for you, it's something else that it's not like you love it or you hate it. You could then say, well, I'm just kind of ambivalent. I don't like it, I don't hate it, and maybe I'm just a bit ambivalent. So good adjective to know. To give you a little more context, here are some news headlines as far as trying to make it a little easier to understand. So these are actually headlines that I took yesterday. Autocracy or democracy. More and more people are ambivalent. Not a positive trend, I would say. Not a good thing, but in this case, you could say people are ambivalent, like they don't really care one way or the other. The next one, the best leaders aren't decisive, they're ambivalent. This is the headline of the title. Again, I didn't read the article, so I can't really talk about it. Most times I think people would think leaders are, very decisive, make quick decisions, but the article's trying to say they're ambivalent. Then the last one, teachers are happy with cell phone bans. Students are more ambivalent. And I would be someone who is very happy with a ban on cell phones. And I guess, some students, maybe it's important to them, but for many of them, maybe they don't care, like they don't have to use it at school, and therefore they are ambivalent. What do you think? And maybe this one might be a little more difficult. I feel like I always say that, and then everybody writes the answer down there in the chat. She has taste in clothes. So it starts with the letter I. And the meaning is in accordance with the highest standards. You heard me emphasize highest standards. Perfect and with no problems. So in that case, you could say something is, and immaculate is a good guess, but that is not the word that are talking about. What do you, think about, try to run through all of those adjectives that can be very descriptive. And this is a common collocation. You could use immaculate when talking about someone's taste, but I think this is perhaps even a little more common to say somebody has taste in clothes. So the word, the adjective that we're looking for, insane, no, that's close. Good job. I see a couple answers. Impeccable. So if something is impeccable, then you're really talking about, I'm going to emphasize it again, the highest standards. And in this case, yes, she has impeccable taste in clothes. So here are some other collocations with this adjective that I think are very useful if you want to use them. And it gives you a sense as to how the adjective is used. You could say someone has impeccable manners or impeccable taste. I mentioned this was a collocation. Impeccable style or impeccable service, perhaps talking about a restaurant or a hotel. An impeccable record, if you're referring to maybe a politician. And then impeccable credentials, if talking about perhaps a job applicant. And their credentials are impeccable. Great word to add emphasis when referring to those very high standards and saying that something or even someone is impeccable. All right. I love that you love this word. Thank you. Thank you for showing the love. How about this one? I feel like many of you are going to get it, but we'll see. I've been surprised before. I do think this is fairly commonly used, but I would still say it's an advanced word. My brother presented me with a very business opportunity. So this adjective begins with the letter L, and the meaning is producing a great deal of profit. So it's very, I'd say rather specific. We're talking about a great deal of profit, and therefore you could say something is, there's an L sound, and then how would you finish it? This is another, the example sentence is another collocation, a opportunity. So I'm going to go ahead and say it. Yes, I saw a lot of answers in there. Angela, Ibrahim, Julia, lucrative. Something is lucrative. And I know that many of you got this, and some of you know this word, you're very familiar with it, and you might think, I don't know if that's really advanced. I'd say just because if a word is advanced, it really doesn't mean that it's like never used, but this is certainly a word that you'll come across if you're interested or reading a lot about especially business. And you might hear people talk about a business that is very lucrative or a lucrative opportunity. I just mentioned that is a common collocation. So if something is lucrative, if I tell you, wow, I have a very lucrative offer for you, then I'm basically saying that there's a lot of money involved in this. It's a great way to make profit. But this is also one of these words that you need to be careful of in English, because I would say people that are maybe trying to take advantage of others, or you talk people scamming others. This is a word that people will use. Oh, this is very lucrative. It's easy money, very easy way to get rich, and it is extremely lucrative. So it's descriptive, but be careful if somebody is, trying to sell you some lucrative opportunity. Just take it with a grain of salt. That's my that is my unsolicited advice with regards to that. How about this? His behavior is one of the reasons why he lost his job. So this adjective refers to moving or behaving in a way that is not, this keyword, not regular, not certain, or not expected. And therefore, you could say that someone or something is what? Again, I've tried to, as I've gone through and given you these example sentences, I've intentionally tried to use some common collocations when talking about behavior. If the behavior is a little unexpected, you'd be like, wow, I didn't expect that. Or it's irregular, you might say someone's behavior is or they have behavior. This word does have a negative connotation, especially when talking about someone's behavior. It is not egregious. That's another adjective, another advanced descriptive adjective that really just means horrible. That would work. You could say somebody's behavior is egregious. However, the meaning doesn't really line up with egregious, which is more like horrible, bad, whereas this is talking about Again, think about moving or behaving, in this case, behaving in a way that's just not expected. It's irregular. You're a little surprised. You're like, oh, wow, this person's behavior is erratic. All right, well done. Excellent. Lali, Ioana, well played. So erratic behavior is a collocation. If you want to talk about the way that someone's behaving, it does have more of a negative connotation if you say that someone's behavior is erratic, that one moment they're very happy and then they're very angry, and they kind of just change quickly from one mood to the next. And you might describe someone's behavior is erratic. But it could also refer to movement. Maybe someone is driving in an erratic way, and you're just moving in this irregular way, and it's probably not very safe, but it could refer to movement as well when you say that something or someone is erratic. Here are some other collocations. I guess with these collocations, I'm actually throwing a lot of vocabulary at you, but I think you guys can handle it. I think you can. So I mentioned erratic behavior already, but maybe you go to the doctor. Again, this would be a negative thing. If they say, well, you have an erratic heartbeat and it's just not regular, or erratic movement. You could talk about the weather. The weather is very erratic. Or say something is highly erratic and using that adverb adjective collocation, as well as increasingly erratic. So these are some words that you may likely find with the adjective erratic. So let's move on to our next part of speech. Talk about some powerful nouns. All right, everybody loves a good noun. So now I'm taking away that first letter. I am not going to allude to the correct answer anymore by providing you with the first letter. I'm still going to give you the meaning in an example sentence to try to help you put it into context. So I still think you all will perform fairly well. The initial test results were viewed as an So we're talking about something that is different, abnormal, peculiar, or not easily classified. There is a hint in this, and I'll go ahead and tell you the hint. Think about that article. The article that comes before the noun. So you could use this as a hint. The initial test results were viewed as an. This tells you that the noun is going to start with a with a vowel sound. It's going to begin with a vowel sound, and we're talking about, saw some answers in there, maverick, imperfectionism, an anomaly. So if something is an anomaly, it is just different from something else. I will say that if you're referring to something as an anomaly, typically there are other measurements, or there's something that you can compare it to so that you know that, oh, this one thing is different. This test result is an anomaly. It's different than what would be considered normal. Or if you say something else is an anomaly, it stands out and is different from the rest or from what is the expected result. When you say something is an anomaly, it's an anomaly. How about this one? I think this is a good word. I think you can go out and use it because you could probably think of a situation that maybe you are facing right now that you could use this noun. We are faced with an agonizing and it seems there is no correct choice. So we're talking about a noun that means, that refers to a situation in which a difficult choice has to be made between two or more alternatives, especially ones that are equally undesirable. So think about the specific meaning, talking about making a choice. That's even part of the example sentence. And I think generally there are two, but as it says in the meaning, there could be more than one. And basically what you're alluding to, I'm just going to keep using that verb throughout the lesson. Basically what you're alluding to when you use this noun is that, well, you don't really like any of the choices. So it's a little more specific. And as I was rambling on, you all gave a lot of excellent answers. We're talking about a dilemma. So if you are faced with a dilemma, then you really need to make a choice. And you may have two options, 3 options, 4 options. But really, in this situation, you don't really view any of them as desirable. And like, oh, this is a great choice that I have to make. So again, I think this is a good noun because, like I said, I think we can all relate to it, and we have all faced a time when we had to, when we faced a dilemma. Once again, that is a common verb that you may use with this noun, to face a dilemma. I wanted to give you these examples to highlight the fact that a choice needs to be made. So, for example, this first article, news headlines, best of Beth Ashley, not really sure who that is. The retirement dilemma, what to do now, a lot. So you retire, well, what's the dilemma? Should I find something else to do, work around the home? And maybe this is a dilemma and people, they don't know what to do and they don't really like any of their choices. The next one, return or stay, the dilemma facing Syrians living in Europe and trying to make this decision. And finally, the family business dilemma, who is next in line? In this case, you could have, 2, 3, 4 children, and there are multiple options, and it is certainly a dilemma. I think of the show Succession. In that case, if you have not seen it, great show, talking about a family business, and that's really the main storyline, the dilemma. Who is going to take over the family business? How about this? I feel like this one might be a little more challenging. There are several for promoting people who don't have formal qualifications. Based on the sentence, I think it may be a little harder to come up with this noun, but really the meaning is any act, decision, or case that serves as a guide or justification for subsequent situations. This is a word that I think is often used, and you may encounter it if you're talking about the courts and rulings and the judiciary. That you may, but you could use it in other contexts as well, like the one I'm giving you is more of a business context. There are several for promoting people who don't have formal qualifications. So this is a guide for and a justification for subsequent situations. What do you think? Do you have any guesses what this noun could be? Once again, I think once I show you, many of you are going to, oh yes, I've heard of this noun before. Maybe you even actively use it from time to time. We'll see. Or perhaps if it's new, then that's perfect. Well played, Cindy. We're talking about a precedent. So I mentioned that you might hear this more in a judicial context as far as a court ruling and saying, oh, there is a precedent already that this was the ruling in the past and it's going to serve as justification for a court ruling in the present. And there is a precedent. Now, this context, I think it does fit in the example sentence saying, well, there is a precedent for promoting people who don't have formal qualifications. So it's been done in the past, and maybe we're in this situation now, and we're looking at we're going to promote someone, and maybe I tell you, well, this person doesn't really have a lot of formal qualifications. Maybe that should disqualify them. And you tell me, well, look, it's happened in the past. There's a precedent for promoting people without formal qualifications. It works. All right. So hopefully, again, if this noun is new, then that's perfect. How about this? Arranging childcare over the school holidays can be a real for working parents. Well, I'll tell you in just a second what I was about to say. The meaning is a confusing or difficult problem or question. Now, the reason why I was chuckling just a moment ago is because in a previous question, some people had actually put this answer as the answer to a previous question, and I will follow up on that in just a minute. So we're talking about a confusing or difficult problem or question. Perhaps it's a puzzle, maybe it's a riddle, we don't know. But in this situation, I think it applies. And more so, this is a situation in the U.S. having to figure out childcare, or pretty much, all the time. But over the school holidays, it can be a real for working parents. I see some right answers. I like the answer disaster. That is true. It can be a real disaster for working parents. But the word that we're looking for is a conundrum. It can be a real conundrum for working parents. What do you do in this situation? This is a difficult problem, and we got to figure out how to solve this problem. So you know me, I like giving you these fun little memes, or to give you an example. I thought this was funny as far as this cat, the conundrum. I love this box. Wait, is that a new box? And then, of course, the cat moves over there and lays down. It's like, I missed that old box. I was just confused. And then they go back. And you could say, well, this is quite the conundrum, the problem that this cat is trying to solve. Now, one thing you may be thinking, or if you're not thinking of it, I want you to think about it right now. What is the difference between a conundrum and a dilemma? Because they are similar. I'd say the similarity mostly is because there are situations in which you could use either one. So that's why I also use this, because I could say, well, that's quite a conundrum. This cat is trying to solve this problem. Okay, which box should I use? I could also use dilemma to describe this situation. This cat is faced with a dilemma. What box is the best one to relax in? And maybe they don't like either choice because they feel like, well, I'm always going to regret, and I wish I were in the other box. So I could describe something and say, well, somebody's facing a dilemma, or that's quite the conundrum. But just to highlight the difference between them, and of course, I'm trying to make a use of AI as much as I can, just like everybody else. And nowadays, when you do a Google search, I just wanted to highlight this. I did think that the AI overview gave a nice description highlighting that nuance, because if you can't see it, I'll just read it there. It says, a dilemma demands a choice. You have to make a decision when you're talking about a dilemma. Do I do this or do I do that? When talking about a conundrum, you're really just referring to this challenge, and it's talking about a challenge of somebody's thought process or understanding, kind of like a puzzle. So you could refer to the situation as a conundrum. It's a difficult problem to solve. That difficult problem could be a choice that you have to make, and that's why there is some overlap with dilemma and conundrum. But when you're talking about dilemma, there is a decision that must be made. So really think about a choice when you're talking about dilemma. So here are some powerful adverbs. All right, we're moving through all the parts of speech today. What do you think? So this is actually a longer, vocabulary list, and I'll show you all of them at the end. Each song was integrated into the film. What adverb can we use that means smoothly, without any breaks, interruptions, or noticeable changes, or in a way that is perfectly integrated and uninterrupted? I feel like this meaning really captures this adverb. It is one that I think you're familiar with it. I imagine that if you read articles, you've come across this word, you've heard it before, if you listen to a lot of English movies, TV shows, news, what have you. So in this case, I'm trying to say that it really went in smoothly with the film, and it is kind of a common collocation with integrated. I could say that the songs were seamlessly integrated, and many of you rock that one. Just keep in mind, seamlessly is spelled S-E-A instead of two E's. Sometimes this word is commonly misspelled. So if something is done seamlessly, it's very smooth, no breaks, no interruptions, and you try to do something seamlessly. I try to do these lessons. They are not always seamlessly. They are not always done seamlessly because depending on my internet connection, there could be a break, a drop, things happen that are beyond my control. And therefore, unfortunately, I cannot say that they are done seamlessly. Here are some useful collocations, and just want to point out that I'm talking about verb, adverb collocations. All of these are verbs that you might use with this adverb in saying that something fits seamlessly, or it flows seamlessly, or moves seamlessly, blends seamlessly, to merge seamlessly, or to connect seamlessly. Of course, there are other verbs that you can use with this adverb. I just wanted to give you a sample because I do think it helps you get a better understanding of the word and how it's used when you see these collocations. How about this one? He had given away their secret. We're talking about an adverb that means without intention, accidentally, and really it is interchangeable with accidentally, because I could say he had accidentally given away their secret. That works, but I don't want to use that word. Everybody knows the word accidentally. I want to use another, more flavorful, powerful adverb. I could use this word instead. He had given away their secret. There are other, now that everybody's writing them down there, yes, of course there are others that would fit. Unintentionally, that would work. Haphazardly, that also works, but that is not the word that I'm thinking of. The one that I wanted to point out is another one that everybody's people have been writing. Julia, DeWitt, well done. Inadvertently. If you do something inadvertently, it just means you didn't mean to do it. It was accidental or it was unintentional. So these are words that, are rather interchangeable. Now, one thing I will say about the pronunciation in British English, you are going to hear that true T inadvertently. You may even hear it in the US. Some Americans may say it like that as well, inadvertently. But if I were to say this inadvertently, you hear that glottal T, that glottal stop, inadvertently. So it does make it a little more challenging to say with the American accent if you're going to use that glottal stop inadvertently. Inadvertently. You can give it a try. Inadvertently. How about this next one? The professor stated the rules for the assignment. Once again, I think now you get the meaning. I think you'll be able to pick out the adverb. So stated the rules for assignment in a clear, detailed manner, leaving no room for confusion or doubt. And in that case, somebody is doing something how? I can give it away. All of these are ly adverbs because we're talking about how in this case. So the professor stated the rules for the assignment. So they gave them in a clear and detailed manner, leaving no room for confusion. Precisely, it would work, but precisely is more, I feel, about like accuracy, and it's just really done in an accurate way. But again, it would fit. Concisely is more, makes me think more about the time that it's done in a short manner if something is concise. The word that I'm talking about, or that I'm looking for in this case, is explicitly. When something is done explicitly, and a lot of times you might use this when explaining something or talking about it. So I'm using it with the verb stated. They explicitly stated or explicitly said not to do something. So in this case, if the professor explicitly explains the details, the rules for the assignment, then they are providing the information in a very clear and detailed way so that there is no confusion, no doubt, and something is done, or in this case, said explicitly. And that's another phrase you might hear if somebody says, oh, I explicitly said not to do this thing. And they were trying to say that, oh, they told you this information in a clear and detailed way. It is 10 o'clock, so my roommates are still at the pub. This is just a made-up example. I don't have any roommates, and I am certainly not at the pub at 10 o'clock. I try to be in bed at that time at this point. It is 10 o'clock, so my roommates are still at the pub. But if we want to just think about the context, we're talking about an adverb that is used to convey what is a certain, it's very likely, though it's not known for certain. So we're going to use this when we want to highlight that, well, I think this is likely what's happening, but, it could be wrong. That it may not be the case. It is 10 o'clock, so my roommates are still at the pub. The word that we're looking for, /, well done, well played. We're talking about presumably. Presumably is used to convey that, well, I think this is probably true. It's likely true, but, it may be wrong. Presumably. It is 10 o'clock, so presumably my roommates are still at the pub. I have, I thought this was funny. Presumably good at helping people stay alive. And it is a picture right there. You can see the name on the sign, Dr. BG. And for those of you who may be a little older, perhaps you'll get this joke. The Bee Gees, if you're familiar with the movie, gosh, I'm drawing a blank, Saturday Night Fever, the one a long time ago with John Travolta, that was the song in the movie by the song by the Bee Gees, that staying alive, staying alive. Again, I'm not going to sing it for you. My singing is horrible, but that's the joke. That Dr. BG, thinking of the music group, the Bee Gees, presumably, this person's really good at helping people stay alive. Here are all of the words that we just looked at. So there are 16 of them that we went through. I know I gave you a lot of vocabulary today, especially with those collocations, but hopefully it gives you a better understanding as to how the word is used in context. So right now, just to review very quickly, I know that when it comes to building your vocabulary, you are not ambivalent. You are somebody who is passionate about learning new words and phrases. And therefore, I think that you are faced with a dilemma right now. You can either watch another video lesson, or maybe you're just going to go. I hope that you are going to choose to watch another video lesson. And if you do, then the transition is you can seamlessly transition from this video to another video, continue building your vocabulary. And I just want to reiterate that one more time. I think you should watch another lesson so that you can continue learning new things, because I like to think these lessons are just impeccable. All right, even though you might have to deal with my erratic behavior from time to time. Okay, so that's all the review that I'm going to give you. I hope that you enjoyed the lesson and that you learn something new. Again, if you want to get these lesson notes, check out the link down below in the description. Go out, try to use these words, make them a part of your active vocabulary, and just keep developing your overall English fluency.